Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us. Everyone in.
Now you're welcome along. So never a dull moment. Much to discuss this evening. To do so, we have Rory O'Connor of the Irish Independent in studio, and Kieth Wood, you're there as well. Hello.
I am indeed. How are you, Joe?
Very well, very well. So Rory, the news has come through. This has reached its inevitable conclusion in Paris. The game between France and Ireland is postponed. Andy Farrell speaking after training. It is what it is. You can't do anything. But the right thing, the reaction of the players when we came off the training ground this morning was one of deflation a little bit. We're gutted, but this is, it was always going to happen. October 31st is the weekend that very, very quickly has been talked about.
Yeah, it looks that way. I mean, the French seem to be ahead of the curve in terms of the information getting out today. Midi Olympique had a story this morning saying Ireland-Italy will go ahead. I think it was on the 25th or the previous weekend, and the France game, and they were anticipating all three games will be postponed, but we've since learned that Wales and Scotland will go ahead as planned this weekend. But the two games that will probably have a material impact on the way the destination of the title will go ahead on, well, it hasn't been confirmed yet, but we expect it to be the 31st of October, which is just before the November internationals, just after Europe. It kind of makes sense. I mean, I think we've all known this game probably wasn't going to take place for a fair way out. It's good, I suppose, to have clarity on it. But I guess for those 34 or so players leaving Abbottstown today and heading back to their provinces, there's absolutely no guarantee for any of them that they'll be back in 7 months' time. A lot can happen. There's a lot of players that are injured now that will be fit then. There'll be players that are leaving today that, unfortunately will pick up stuff along the way. There's 2 games in Australia during the summer. So whatever about, we always hear the Six Nations is a momentum competition. This is a very different tournament. But, the decision had to be taken. There's far bigger stuff at play.
Yeah. It's obviously not good for the tournament, clearly, Keith, but in the event of France not completing the Grand Slam, at least, we don't now have 2 meaningless games between England and Italy and Ireland and Italy. There's actually a bit of intrigue and plenty on the line for the games in October, if they happen in October, obviously. So not good, clearly, but not quite disastrous either. I mean, we can all get a bit excited come October time, hopefully.
Yeah, I think we all get a little bit nearly too excited now as part of it. And to Rory's point about the players, they won't be guaranteed their place back in a while. They don't care about that at this instance. They know it's amazing. We talk about it a lot in the media, but the players have to deal with exactly what happens. They just get on with it. What do they do next? Let's get their focus onto the next thing, whatever operates then next. So they're not even thinking along the lines of what's going to happen in 6 or 7 months' time. They just move on to the next one, and it's whether there's going to be other disruptions now, and if there are many more disruptions, how does that impinge on the rest of the season? Does it impinge then on summer tours? And all you're wishing for when you hear about anything with this, and the medical announcements are coming out, are very different from different countries. Actually, I just listened to the British chief medical officer, saying that actually he doesn't think that there's a huge issue with large events at all. He said if somebody has coronavirus, it's only the few people around them will get it, and as opposed to going to a dinner party and the risk is that if one of them has it there, everybody gets it. So it's just different. Different countries seems to have a different take on it. And the worry and the wish from all the players will be, they just don't want anybody they know are they getting sick. They don't want any of the fans getting sick. And we don't know whether this is right, wrong, or indifferent because we're not experts in this sphere. But the experts are even disagreeing.
They are, yeah. My first thought when you said what the British medical officer said was, well, what if a couple of thousand people at that game have it? And everyone's within someone. So, look, we are where we are. We're not experts in it. This is what's happening. November will therefore be Australia, South Africa, Japan, and maybe these 2 games around that window as well.
5 weeks in a row.
In the short term, so the ECPR have come out to say that Heineken Champions Cup goes ahead as scheduled. Again, a very fluid, fast-moving story, Rory. But Leinster Saracens of particular interest in Dublin. Leinster, as I understand it, have 2 games upcoming in South Africa. I would have presumed the plan would have been to hold back Johnny Sexton and the frontline players, prepare in Dublin. But now if they do that, then they're going to go, what, 4, 5, 6 weeks without a game? So that's not ideal.
Well, I think
either.
that's to Keith's point. I think, the players want to switch to the next thing. For Munster, they don't have a game, like next week, because they're playing Italian teams for the next 2 weekends. What's next is so up in the air as well. Leinster, as I understand it, will take a group of the frontliners, I think probably for the first week, and will play a strong team against the Cheetahs, probably fly them home and either have another team to go and play the Southern Kings in the second game. I mean, Leinster could probably send over the St Mary's first and they still get a result against the Southern Kings. They're the worst team in the competition. So, and also they're home and hose in the Pro 14. So that game doesn't, that's not a priority for them. So I think they'll get, whoever needs game time will go to South Africa, get some time, but they'll be back, because 3 years ago, Munster, maybe it was 2 years ago, Munster played Racing straight off the plane to South Africa and it was the disaster. So I think they want to get back from altitude, get reacclimatised and give themselves a proper window to do it. The big question now is whether that game, whereas the Six Nations have the scope to run these games next season at some point because they're so valuable to everyone, EBC are operating under much more stringent, they're in a much tighter space because they need to get it done by the end of the season. They've tickets sold for a game in Marseille on May, I think it's the 21st, I could be wrong on that. They have to, maybe 25th, I think, they have to get these games played when they need to be played or else the tournament is gone. Yeah. So, I mean, I think there is a very big potential in the wake of St. Patrick's Day being cancelled that game could take place behind closed doors or something like that. I can't see postponement, how that would work, unless there was some sort of swap around with Pro 14 and it just gets very, very messy there. Unless they go with seed. I don't know how they work that out, but they kind of have, that show either has to go on or it gets cancelled, and they're intending to play the games. But again, they're, like everyone else, they're waiting for the experts. So they're waiting on the Irish government, the French government to give them advice. And as it stands, the 2 quarterfinals to be held in France would not go ahead under the current guidelines. But they are allowing the Paris-Nice race go ahead and a couple of football games to go ahead because they're under a tighter schedule. Okay.
Well, we'll park the speculation for now. It's all very messy, but what we do know is Ireland-France in Paris is off. As for the championship, if we talk in realities, because otherwise the permutations will just take us all evening, England will beat Italy and get a bonus point, so they will go to 18 points at whatever stage it all happens. Ireland will beat Italy ultimately and get to 14 points, and then France are on 13. So Ireland would need to beat France to go level on points with England, and then it would be, in effect, who can come out with the better points difference against the Italians. Or if Ireland want to be very, very impressive, Keith, they could beat the French in Paris with a bonus point and then win the tournament. So technically it's in their own hands, but in reality it's not quite there.
Yeah,
and France actually France are in big trouble. They're not going to catch England realistically. They need a bonus point win against Ireland, which they will feel probably in Paris is possible. But the short version is England emerge from this weekend sitting pretty.
Yeah, how the hell did that happen? But look, us to go to Paris, even in October, to get a bonus point win, that's fully comfortable for us. We've been doing that for years and years, haven't we? Only not. So when we do win there, it tends to be by a point. So that's a pretty big call for us. I don't think that I think you go back to the old times and make certain that you stay in the game, and if you can score a try every 20 minutes, maybe it is possible. But I think that is that's dreamland stuff for us for the most part. And if we're being practical about it, we would go after Italy. And go after Italy, there's a 10-point differential that England have. England tend to score a lot of points against England, but we would try and beat England, score more than 4 tries, of course, but rack up the points, literally just go for bust on it. And that may be what's necessary for us to go and win the championship. And you're in a championship to win it, so maybe you take a huge gamble and go for everything on that day.
Yeah. So the weekend that was, England 33, Wales 30. Let's start with the Joe Marler incident, because realistically, such is human nature. In 10 years' time, that is all this game will probably be remembered for. So Joe Marler and Courtney Laws have been cited. Laws cited for a tackle on Alan Wynne-Jones, and then Manu Tuilagi, who we will come to most definitely. He faces a mandatory hearing after his red card. That will be in Dublin this Thursday. Joe Marler, he's been cited based on law 9.27. Grabbing, twisting or squeezing the genitals is the wording of the law. The entry point here is a 12-week ban, and it goes right up to 24 weeks. So this, generally I think agreed that this was an attempt at provocation. It was clearly inappropriate. It was just a bizarre thing to do. And in some respects, because if we retrace the timeline, because it was so bizarre, I would think a healthy quotient of people almost thought it was funny. I think we looked around in disbelief. What is this fella at? And then a real mood change occurred in the Alan Wynne-Jones press conference, and we can have a look at that now.
Mentioned discipline. There was one incident during a scuffle where you had a rather interesting approach from Joe Marler. Thoughts on that?
Can you specify?
He appeared to be grabbing you by a central area.
Can you specify again?
Genitalia?
Yeah, it's interesting. What would you do in that situation, Nick?
I thought you did well not to react.
138 tests for my country. You know, it's funny, I react, I get a red card. So, it's tough, isn't it? Hopefully World Rugby have a look at it. Joe's a good bloke. You know, lots of things happen on a rugby field. My question is, it's difficult as a captain these days because you can't speak to a ref about anything, it feels. You know, I look at a touch judge, obviously didn't see what happened, and that's fine. But there's a lot of footage that has been shown. Obviously, it seems there's a lot of supporters that saw what happened. It's just very frustrating, the fact that we talk a lot about TMOs and footage review, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of it happening.
So that was Alan Wynne-Jones, and you could hear, you know, the initial laughter, and then he asked for a specification, a little bit less laughter, and at the point where the journalist says, "Oh, you're, you know, almost meekly, your genitalia," then almost the seriousness of it begins to dawn on people, and it is serious. And Marlar, I would put it to you, Rory, whatever his intention, and I'm not inside the man's head, he can't complain, whatever the ban he's on the receiving end of is. Such a public, high-profile event. It's gone around the world. It is terrible for the game. He can have no complaints.
Yeah, I think there has to be a degree of proportion, because there was acts in that game and in other games that put players' health and well-being at risk, such as the Manu Tuilagi incident and also the punch in the Scotland game. And you know, but this was just the worst form of banter taken. You know, and it was the initial reaction to it was, you know, laughing emojis on Twitter and, you know, cheap hits on websites and look at this, you know, this great incident. But as soon, like, it shouldn't need to be said that it's not appropriate to touch someone in that way in any form of life. And just because you're wearing a jersey, shorts and socks and you're playing in front, you know, you're a highly paid rugby player or even an amateur rugby player, you know, playing in front of those people, it doesn't make it okay. There's nothing that about those 4 white lines that allows you to do that. No. And even if, like, you can be pro-face about these things, but even if Alan Wynne-Jones had laughed it off, it's still, just because Alan Jones is cool with it doesn't mean the next guy isn't, you know, is. And it, like, I think rugby players need to look at themselves sometimes and the things that they go on with, and not to tar everyone with the same brush. Marler's a character. I mean, people laughed at his kind of interview a couple of months ago. He is kind of a quirky, irreverent type, and he does look at things a different way. He's trying to wind them up. Like, there's other ways to wind them up. Like, don't go there. No. Kieth, your reading on the whole situation?
Well, there's a couple of parts in that. Obviously, what Marler did is it's ludicrous to think that is any part of the game. So, my belief is they'll come down on him like a ton of bricks. He's going to get sanctioned for that. The other point that was on it was the one that Alan Wynne-Jones made, which is a point that's very clear or very close to my heart, is in relation to referees and referees and captains. Respect is a two-way street. The captain has to be allowed to talk to the referee, and at any stage in the game, if he says, "I'm sorry, ref, I have something I'd like to have a discussion with you about," if the referee respects the captain, he'll answer him. So too many of the referees are dismissive. Now, admittedly, there is too much chat going on all the time. And I would imagine that the referee is sick to death of listening to out-halves in particular shouting at them all the time. And Bigger comes in for a lot of grief over that he never shuts up talking to the referee all the time. I'd love to bring it back to the point of where there is a proper sanction. If a guy is shouting at the referee, marching back 10 yards. If he does it again, give him a yellow card. It would stop very, very quickly, because you have to have an open line between the captain and the referee. And Alan Jones didn't seem to have an opportunity to discuss that at that moment in time. I thought he showed unbelievable restraint, not decking someone who did it. And if he did, he'd have been sent off. That became another issue in the other game, and I'm not standing behind the red card in the Scottish game, but Richie should have been yellow carded for sprinting in and causing the whole thing to start in the first place. And we're losing a little bit of it at this stage, but I don't know what was going through Marler's head.
Like, just bizarre. And obviously in other circumstances, and people have made this point on social media, and you follow a certain logic, and things get very serious. That I don't want to fully go there, but like in other circumstances, what he did would be, he'd be in big trouble, to say the least. So World Rugby now have this landed on their lap, and they have to decide whether it's a serious sanction or a token one. And because of the circumstances, I fully expect serious. Like, you get into strange territory here. I was listening to Will Greenwood, very intelligent man, you know, and he's on Sky Sports News, and he's quoting law 9.27 and saying grabbing, twisting or squeezing is the wording, and trying to compare how that fits around what Marlar did, and therefore maybe it might be difficult to hit him with a ban based on the exact wording of the law. And you're just into crazy territory there, and it's just, well, hang on, it's a very simple case of big offence. What is it they call it in
football is ungentlemanly conduct?
Yeah.
I think that falls under that kind of... I mean, I don't think there is any physical harm, but only really your significant other and your doctor should be really allowed to go there, and if an opposition player on the pitch goes there, he should be probably hit with a fairly... I wouldn't go ban him for years or anything like that, but I mean, this could be the end of Joe Marler's international career, because he's kind of at that point in his career.
The entry point is 12 weeks.
Yeah.
The entry point is 12 weeks. It can go up to 24 weeks, certainly. So that will be on Thursday, and the eyes of the rugby world and beyond will be on World Rugby to see how they handle that. Let's move out of that for the time being, because there is the individual idiocy of Marlar, which I would suspect is not something rugby, thankfully, will have to confront on a regular basis. We're not going to be talking about an instance like this too often. But the Tuilagi one, arguably, is you know, the more serious issue for rugby to deal with going forward. Just on the tackle, Kieth, I don't really feel like it needs saying, but we're going to hear Eddie Jones say the opposite to what I suspect you're going to say in a moment. The Tuilagi tackle, complete red card. This could have been very serious for George North. You might just talk us through the tackle, what was wrong with it and why.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's funny. I don't agree with Eddie Jones, that's for certain. I don't know that I'm fully on the full spectrum of... I am criticising Tuilagi because I think it was very, very dangerous. So in the rush to make the tackle, he's going at full tilt to get there. In the midst of it, George North falls and stumbles again on a half tackle. And he makes a collision with the side of his head with his shoulder. Now, you have to take George North's out of this, because he's got a very poor history with concussion, right? And maybe not personalize it to him, but as a tackle, it was just reckless because it wasn't a tackle. His arms never got into a position in which to enact a tackle. I think there is a small bit of mitigation because of the way he fell, and he fell with his head down. But even then, it wasn't a proper tackle. For me, I don't see that as being something that is even vaguely premeditated. I think the hit is. He's trying to make a really big hit. He's not trying to collide with a guy's head. There's no way in the world he is. But he does. And this is one of the queries that we have over what constitutes real health and safety and duty of care going into it. You don't want him to slow down, actually. You don't want him to be in a position where he doesn't make that secondary hit. You want him to be in the position that he does it, but you want him to do it where he's able to wrap a guy properly. Does that mean he has to go marginally slower? I don't know. But for me, it was quite a sickening hit, and most definitely a red card. 100% red card.
Here's Eddie Jones then afterwards. He didn't just defend it, he was angry at the decision afterwards.
At the end, we're 13 against 16, it's hard. We hung in there. I thought we were brilliant performance by the team. I thought our recovery emotionally for that was outstanding, and then we went on and played a good, tough game of rugby.
13 against 16, did you say?
Yep.
Who was the 16?
You worked that out.
What did you make of the red card?
Well, I just find it bizarre. You know, I usually don't comment, but I can't see how you can tackle a guy. So you might as well just say, if someone's tackled like that, you let him go. Because how else are you supposed to tackle him? Like this bit about where your arms are. What a load of rubbish. Like Manu was trying to kill the tackle. That's the only thing he was trying to do. Absolute rubbish. So I'm sorry. I've broken my rule.
Do you think the directives are wrong, or?
Well, I just think there's no common sense applied in that situation. Now, clearly the guy's falling. There's a good chop tackle, but he can come up. Manu's coming over the top to kill the tackle, and he's doing everything that's he's supposed to be doing. He gets red carded. Like, come on.
Are you disappointed with the way Wales came back, or do you feel that was?
Well, when you've got a three-man advantage, it's you're going to do some damage to your team, and that's what happened. And I thought we were exceptional. You know, we got a tough call. Our number 8 coming out got called for a maul. We probably get a ruck there. We kick that ball out. That's the end of the game. We win 30, whatever it was, 33-16. But they got the possession, and then it made it difficult. Which they were chasing the game, and we had a numerical disadvantage. So it was tough.
Rory, so everything he was supposed to be doing, is Eddie Jones's point, when he knows that's not the case.
Well, I think everything he's supposed to be doing is the old put your body on the line thing, and that was actually the key. There was a lot of rubbish in what Eddie Jones had to say there, and a lot of, I think, obfuscation away from the fact that England again failed to get a bonus point from a position where they should have, like they hammered Wales in the same way they hammered Ireland, but ended up 3-point winners. But I think what Tuilagi was doing everything he could to stop George North from getting over the line. So he just hurled himself without really thinking and got himself. It reminded me a little bit of Bundy Aki's red card at the World Cup. You know, I thought he reacted to it in the way that you'd hope he'd react. You know, he took it on himself. He apologised. You know, he shouldn't have done it. He knows he shouldn't have done it. But in that moment, in that split second, he felt that was the only way he could stop a try from happening. Now, how do you coach that out of players? Like, it's 73 minutes into a brutal, violent test match. You know, Wales are pounding the line. Everything they do in training is designed to stop Wales getting over the line. That's the mindset he's in, and he sees this guy diving. He's not, you know, it's much easier to make a bad tackle than a good tackle, and he's made a really bad tackle, and he's very lucky he didn't cause more damage, and I think he'll get a ban to go with a sending off, and that probably is the requisite punishment. I mean, Jones giving him a pass is just Jones. I wouldn't even read too much into that.
But like, isn't that maybe the more egregious aspect of the whole thing? Whilst it should have been a red card and that was dealt with on the pitch, and you've explained the Tuilagi mindset. Yeah. You know, thou shalt not pass. And Shane Horgan on the TV over the weekend made the point that Tuilagi is a repeat offender in this regard. You know, he is prone to not wrapping those hands. He just wants to put a hit in. Yeah. And so you have to deal with that. But actually, it's Jones who holds a serious position in the game globally. Yeah,
that's true.
He's a huge presence in the game, whose words will be, you know, picked up all around the world, willfully, disingenuously saying things like he did everything he's supposed to be doing. Nothing wrong with that. That's a fine tackle. And he will face censure for that.
It's the same coach who wants his team to go out and play with brutality. That's the word that he uses. I mean, that England team plays so close to the line. They cross it quite frequently. That's one of the things that makes them as good as they are, and they bring games to a place where they are sometimes uncomfortable to watch. There was hits in that game across the board. I mean, we saw the Courtney Laws ones. The Hadley Parks tackle has been highlighted on social media as well. Like, that was a fairly, it was up there with, you know, the 09. I don't know, it was as tough as the 09 second test in the Lions, which was the most brutal game of rugby I've ever seen. So that is what coaches have to, that is the kind of potentially irresponsible thing that coaches bring. But for, you know, I find it very difficult to understand how players are going to defend the line when another player is carrying in close without causing injury. It is a dangerous game, and I think Tuilagi, Tuilagi I think will get his punishment. But yeah, Jones,
it's more Jones.
I think it's more just the Premier League nature of the way Jones, like, he's like Mourinho at times, and he's kind of, I think by focusing on what Jones says, sometimes you get away from the actual issues that are at play with his team. But I take your point completely that he's in a position of responsibility and should be more responsible.
Well, between Marler, Tuilagi, the lads made the point in OTBAM this morning. Owen Farrell is playing right on the line throughout. This team are in the referee's ear. They're a fantastic team as well. But like they're a cynical bunch, to say the least, Keith. Like it is incumbent on Jones, I would put it to you, Keith, to come out afterwards and just to say, do you know what? It was a red card. I accept that. Manu was desperately trying to stop the try. You have to be fair to him. Should have wrapped the arms. We'll talk to him about it. That's the direction we want the game to go in. But not a bit of it, and the opposite. And in that respect, it's unacceptable. The game has had a really bad weekend here, and very few people from the game are facing up to that. And we just go on, and we'll come to the punch thrown in the France game. Yeah, like Eddie Jones behaving like that is just ridiculous.
I think that's how he behaves. And I think there's an element of truth in what Rory said in terms of he talks at times and it takes pressure off his players. Look, if you go on that tackle, there was a connection with the head, irrespective of the no arms. There's a connection with the head. That's a red card. Off you go. You know it's a red card. So for me, there's a couple of issues in relation to it. One of them is the fact that coaches who disagree with the laws still get the players to play in that fashion. And in the World Cup, the Samoan coach had said, look, I still want the guys to play the way they've always played. Well, that's wrong and dangerous, and you can't do it. To a point of Joe Schmidt at one stage disputing the high tackle, not the high tackle, but the choke tackle, that it means guys will get hurt. You do get hurt because there are collisions up head on head. The coaches have to respond to the laws. It's a really, really tough physical game.
Sure.
It's tough. No, there's no way this is getting any easier. It's not easier than my day. It's differently tough and in totally different ways. But the game is tough enough. You have to follow the laws of it. He's not following the laws if he thinks that isn't a penalty and if that isn't a red card. Of course it is. And I agree with you. I think it's amazing because that game was an extraordinary game of rugby. It really, really was. So 99% of that game was just unbelievably hard to watch. It was so physical, and yet it was pretty amazing for the effort. It was amazing how Wales came back at the end, even with the accounting for the red card and the yellow card. But it'll be remembered for those sort of things, as you said. So, look, it's a game that's in a bit of trouble because of how physical it is. We have to remember it isn't just for the international game. It's also for all the kids that come and watch that game and want to play that way next week or the week after. So what actually happens on the field on the Saturday often gets replicated. So there is that duty as well. It isn't just to the England jersey or the international jersey. So I think it's a tough week, and we're going to see what's going to happen later on in the week, because if World Rugby come out and give a suspension, what then does Eddie Jones say? That's the question.
We'll move on to the actual rugby now. Just to leave you with, Alan Quinlan was an OTBAM. You can watch the full interview, go to offtheball.com, you can podcast it. Here's Alan Quinlan this morning on the Tuilagi incident.
Tuilagi's one on George North. Again, people are saying it's not a red. Most of them are English people online. It's a red, it's a clear red. It's a dangerous,
it's a long suspension.
Dangerous tackle. There's force in it. If he brings his arm up and has the same diving movement, it's understandable that you're doing everything in your power to stop him, which Eddie Jones is trying to say, what could he do differently? He could bring his bloody right hand up and at least attempt to wrap. His arm is down here. He missed George Forbes. He clipped off his head. He could have killed the guy. And if that's more important than Joe Marler grabbing Alan Wynne Jones's balls, in my opinion, that is the thing that needs to be spoken about and needs to be addressed. He's a serial offender here, Manu Tuilagi.
Okay. Good stuff from Alan Quinlan there. So that's that full interview available. The rugby.
Yeah.
How many minutes into this chat are we? I'm afraid to know. 25 minutes in, the rugby. Kieth said it was a fantastic game. I mean, you park all of that stuff, and that's a considerable parking job.
Yeah.
And it was a hell of a game. 33 points to 30. England again. Bar that first half in Paris, the best team in the tournament.
Oh yeah, I think they're the best team in the world, to be honest. I mean, I know they had a bad World Cup final, but like no one can do what they. I don't think when they're at their best, I don't think anyone can touch them. I think they're so far ahead of anyone in this tournament. I know they've slipped up in Paris, but the way they've dismantled Ireland and Wales in the last couple of weeks, the only caveat being the fact that they've slipped off in the second half of both games. But when they bring it, they have the nastiest forward pack in the world, and I mean that as a compliment. I know we've been talking about the bad parts that come with that at times, but they're so tough. But they never take a backward
sorry to
step.
briefly interrupt. We can still celebrate the physicality.
Of course, you can.
You know, and like informed consent.
Yeah.
They're adults.
Yeah.
You're out there. I mean, there is something in human nature that really loves, you know, a bit of a scrap.
And it's the game. And
it's the games.
I mean, Tuilagi's early tackle that just set the tone for the day.
Didn't wrap his hands really.
Yeah, the player didn't survive the contact, but still, you got away with it. They get away with it a lot, and and that's partly. I mean, it's like Itoje has inherited Richie McCaw's cloak of invisibility. He gets away with absolute murder, but Owen Farrell has a bit of it as well. But apart from when they do cross the line, I generally admire it. I think they're a phenomenal team to watch, and they dominate. They should have won both of those games by a lot more points, and it's frightening how good they are with their age profile as well. I mean, they're going to dominate the line selection next year as well. But Wales still hung in there better than Ireland did, and Wales showed an ability to cut them open.
They did. They had a threat. They're a very resilient team, Wales, actually.
Yeah, and the try from the kick-off was just a joy. I mean, like if that was a black and white or a kind of a grainy video from the 70s, people would be watching it over and over again on YouTube. I mean, sometimes we don't celebrate what we see enough. You know, it was phenomenal stuff. But I think it was a great game. But England, it was very clear from quite early on that England were going to win it. Yeah,
Kieth, the game.
Yeah, I thought the game was great as a forward. Yeah, the contact was amazing. The almost a gnarling aggression, and when it was done well, it was done incredibly well. And I think Courtney Laws is a phenomenal player, and he's another guy that often makes a high hit. And there are timing issues in relation to the way he does it. And I think at times they need to change how some of those tackles are done. Tuilagi hits and can't wrap his arms around because the force of the hit knocks him out of the hit. And that's something too, you know. So that's part of it. But I just thought it was compelling. Like every part of that was compelling. And it was a bit snarly. And Farrell, I thought, totally lost his head in the first half. He got penalised 4 times, and normally if you get penalised 4 times, you'll get a yellow card. And
does being captain insulate you from that?
It does a little. Yeah, it does a little, I think. That was one of the reasons they said about making Richie McCaw captain. Yeah. He was going to be stuck in everything anyway. It's very hard to send off the captain. And but it was... you use the word resilient. It's I described them the same actually earlier on today. Right. Wales were not out. Wales have a very high level of fitness and have the ability to score from anywhere, better than most teams actually. Wales and France have that sort of that ability to kind of flash a ball from anywhere. And again, because we're talking about other things, we overlook certain things. I think Tipperick is an extraordinary rugby player, and he is always where the game is at. And in a game of that physicality, he was still going at the end, scoring tries at the end.
So Scotland, France then, 28 points to 17. I mean, the Grand Slam dream is over. No red card in the Six Nations since 2014 and 2 in a weekend. This one needs far less explanation. I understand this. I mean, the Marler thing's a stranger beast, but he lost his temper. He threw the punch. He had to get a red. Kieth, you mentioned Richie, who ultimately got man of the match, by the way, so he managed to get away with that. As for the game itself... Yeah, sorry, go on.
Yeah, he absolutely had to get a yellow card.
Yeah, and the referees noted that he had made the run.
Yeah, the referee noted it, but the TMO didn't really show it, and they concentrated on other things, which there were other things to commentate on. But you have to have the instigators have to be sanctioned in this too, you know. And look, I thought I thought we seemed to lose a little bit of leadership in the refereeing over the weekend. I really believe that. And but it was a bizarre game of rugby because France absolutely forgot to turn up.
Yeah.
They never got out of the change room. Everything they had turned to muck. Everything they tried to do just seemed to be one thing worse than the next. It was quite extraordinary.
At the 34-minute mark, they had Rory weathered the Francois Cross yellow card, and they had scored the try. Dupont again doing his thing. I mean, he's just a joy. So they're 7-6 up after 34 minutes, and you thought, okay, as Kieth said, they haven't come out of the dressing room firing, but they're going to be okay. Then very quickly, red card, then very quickly the Maitland try before half-time, Maitland try after half-time, game over, Grand Slam over.
Yeah.
And maybe that happens with young teams, but it also happens with experienced French teams on the road a little bit of late. And so that's where they are. It is a Grand Slam they will feel left behind them.
Yeah, a lot of people seem to call it. I mean, a lot of people, in fact, Scotland haven't been bad in this tournament at all. They ran Ireland very, very close, probably should have won.
Yeah.
You know, England was a strange game, but they were very much in it. And I think they have a good chance against Wales this weekend as well. So it was probably coming from their point of view that they felt like they deserved it. And they performed very, very well. And, you know, France, while they've made strides, are still very much at the early stages of their development, and they're not good enough to get by while playing badly. Losing again to Mac was a big one. Jalabert looked a bit brainless at times. At times what he was doing looked very exciting, but it was almost always the wrong option. So I think they're going to be around for a while, this French team, and but it was just probably a year too soon.
People had said that about them. This championship it's a year too soon, and then with each passing game, it looked like they might actually deliver, but maybe this is the kind of thing that can happen to a young team.
Yeah, and it just shows that, you know, apart from Italy, there are 5 good, you know, decent teams in this tournament, and it's so hard to win away from home, especially if you don't turn up. I mean, their game plan didn't really make much sense to me. There was a lot of picking and going around the 10-metre line that just seemed quite directionless. I'm not sure what they were trying to achieve. They've been very well coached until now, but it looked like the message got lost a little bit with them, and their decision-making on the pitch was poor as well.
Okay. We're well out of time. Our rugby coverage is brought to you by Vodafone, team of us, everyone in. So I'm not sure how much rugby we'll have to talk about over the next couple of weeks, but we'll do our best. That disciplinary hearing on Thursday will be of interest, and then we'll see what happens with the Heineken Champions Cup as well. So Rory O'Connor of the Irish Independent, thanks very much.
Thanks, Joe.
Kieth, thanks very much.
Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers, Kieth.
Rugby on Off the Ball.
With Vodafone, official sponsors of the Irish rugby team. Team of us, everyone in.